Hello and welcome. You're watching Gravitas. I'm Shreya Upadhyay. Let's get started. On the show tonight, what is happening in the Tirumala temple silk scam in India? Who should be held accountable? And why was the faith of devotees breached? Later on the show, we tell you how Venezuela has slammed United States for what it calls blatant theft after the Trump administration seized a sanctioned oil tanker. The deepening drug war continues between Trump and Maduro. We also get you details about the Bangladesh national elections set to be held on the 12th of February 2026, a closely watched battle after the July uprising. The complete story tonight on Gravitas. If there is shock and anger in my voice, it only reflects what every devotee of one of the holiest temples of the Hindu religion feels and shares. Nothing is sacred in our land. Even our gods and devotees are not safe from vile corruption. Yet another scandal of cheating by contractors helped by collusion at the top of management has rocked Tirumala temple, the sacred abode of Lord Venkateshwara. First, a contaminated ghee was used in the sacred ladoos. And now, a massive silk-dupatta racket has been discovered. It has been discovered that scarves sold to pilgrims believed to be made of mulberry silk were actually made of nothing but cheap polyester. Both expose a ruthless betrayal of faith, an assault on the devotion of millions of pilgrims. The latest outrage erupts from a 54 crore rupee dupatta scam. For nearly a decade, pilgrims visiting the holy shrine have received ceremonial scarves that were supposed to be woven from pure mulberry silk. But what did the suppliers hand over? Cheap polyester fabric, passed off as sacred offerings. The shameful racket came to light only after the TTD chairman, PR Naidu, ordered the vigilance wing to verify whether the scarves matched tender norms. Those norms were crystal clear, 100% pure silk. But the vigilance team found not a thread of silk in the entire lot. Every single scarf came from one firm, VRS Export of Nagari, a company that has been supplying cloth to the temple for years. Samples were pulled out from the TTD warehouse and sent to two different labs. And both labs delivered the same damning verdict: 100% polyester, 0% silk. Even the mandatory silk hologram tag was missing. Yet, this firm allegedly supplied nearly 55 crore rupees worth of cloth between 2015 and 2025. It doesn't end here. It gets worse. The company bagged an additional order of 15,000 dupattas at 1,389 rupees each. Products that vigilance teams now suspect are also made of polyester. The TTD board has handed this matter to the Andhra Pradesh Anti-Corruption Bureau, demanding a full-scale probe into what appears to be a decade-long scam on innocent devotees. But the fraud, remember, does not stop at scarves. The SIT probing the ghee adulteration scandal has taken into custody 2 TTD officials. The 2 suspects were identified as Ajay Kumar Sugandh and Subramaniam. Investigators say both were involved in procuring contaminated ghee that was used to prepare the sacred ladoos offered as prasadam. Lab findings suggest the ghee was mixed with non-dairy and even animal fat, an insult to the centuries-old religious tradition. Now, such corruption can only happen in collusion with those at the top of the management pyramid. Former TTD Executive Officer A.V. Dharma Reddy has also been questioned for hours over lapses in supplier vetting procurement and quality control during his tenure by the CBI-led Special Investigation Team. 2 scandals, 1 holy shrine, and crores of devotees who trusted that their faith was being respected. Tonight, that trust stands betrayed, and it demands justice. Washington drifts away from NATO as its European allies feel the jitters. Now, Moscow is slowly fortifying its defenses. The shadows of the Cold War are coming alive once again. Nuclear fire is returning to Europe's doorstep, this time wearing Belarusian colors. Our next story takes a close look at NATO's military moves and Russia's deployment of nuclear weapons in Belarus.
Lines are shifting, tempers are tightening, and a new nuclear frontier is rising on NATO's doorstep. The silence is deafening, the stakes are immeasurable. In a move that ripped through the already fraying fabric of transatlantic security, the US is hinting at a reduced commitment and the redeployment of assets from NATO's eastern flank. The vacuum is immediate. Former President Biden's administration had announced deployment of long-range missiles in Germany, a posture NATO allies view as a necessary shield, but Moscow calls it a direct escalation. Moscow announced its countermove, the transfer of tactical nuclear arms to its close ally, Belarus. President Lukashenko says these Russian-supplied warheads would be deployed throughout his country. Belarus is also deploying Russia's Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile system. Europe's frontier states Poland, Lithuania, Latvia are on high alert. Western intel agencies say that Moscow has also moved nukes to Kaliningrad, a Russian exclave between Poland and Lithuania. The region is a key concern for NATO because of its advanced missile systems and expanding nuclear infrastructure. As Washington recalibrates and NATO questions its next move, a new nuclear frontier is being drawn, not by treaties or diplomacy, but by raw, visible force. And the world watches, a nuclear chessboard reset, one calculated move at a time. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Shifting focus to Israel now, A global leader in military technology, it's now leveraging its war on Gaza to market its latest technology. And Western buyers are lining up. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal, Europeans are looking to Israel's arms industry amid their own fears of a war with Russia. As per the report, officials from countries including Germany, Norway, and the UK flocked to a conference sponsored by the Israeli Defense Ministry last week that showcased battlefield technology. Tested in by the Israeli military during its war in Gaza, Lebanon, and against Iran, now European interest in advancements in military hardware hardly comes as a surprise. In fact, it comes amid the fear in Europe that Russia is planning to invade other European countries, even as Ukraine war continues to rage. NATO states are aggressively rearming, and despite concerns among some countries over Israel's prosecution of the war in Gaza, the report states that during the event, Israel showcased 2 attack drones flying into a building in Gaza, sending smoke billowing along the Palestinian enclave's coastline. The visuals were shown on a big screen in the crowded auditorium, where Ran Ghazali, CEO of Vision Air, an Israeli defense technology company, told the audience, and I quote, "These are some of the clips that were approved to share." Now implying that the true scale of the destruction caused by these drones could be much worse. Attendees in the event reportedly included US government representatives, executives from private industry, and foreign investors. A formal delegation also reportedly came from India, while Uzbekistan, Singapore, and Canada sent officials. Norway, which pulled investments in Caterpillar over the use of the company's bulldozers in Gaza, reportedly only sent a diplomatic official. Remember, the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for alleged war crimes against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. They too attended this conference. Both Netanyahu and Gallant have denied any wrongdoing, and Israel even contested the legitimacy of these charges. Still, the turnout in this event has been described as much larger than the previous year, which only goes to show that the Israeli military technology retains its allure, regardless of the country's diplomatic isolation over the war in Gaza. For Europe, it is wrestling with its own concerns that the United States is becoming a less reliable partner in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Europe is under pressure to invest more in its own defense. As a result, countries that once criticized Israel for the humanitarian cost of the war are now competing for the same systems used in Gaza. With the fighting in Gaza largely halted and Europe ratcheting up its military spending, European countries appear more comfortable doing business with Israel openly. As for Israel's military-industrial complex, one Israeli military contractor, Elbit, announced in November that it had landed a $2.3 billion contract with an international client. It did not disclose the client or the product, saying only that it would deliver a strategic solution. Earlier in July, Romania announced a deal for more than $2 billion for an air defense system from Rafale. As for Western buyers, Israel's war in Gaza has become a live testbed demonstrating, for better or for worse, what worked and what did not. A new flashpoint has emerged along one of Southeast Asia's most volatile borders. A Chinese-made missile launcher is at the heart of the latest flare-up between Cambodia and Thailand. A single weapon system pushed a fragile peace back towards open conflict. It is still unclear which side broke Monday's ceasefire, with both sides accusing each other of violating the ceasefire. And as the sun rose over the Cambodia-Thailand frontier on Monday, Cambodia quietly moving a weapon close to the border, which has set off a chain of events that either side can contain now. Cambodia had pushed a Chinese-made PHL-3 multiple rocket system closer to the contested border. The vehicle range is nearly 850 kilometers from a Thai provincial airport to a local hospital. To civilian targets, all were suddenly within Cambodia's striking distance. Even as Beijing continues to play the balancing act by calling restraint on the clashes, the presence of this Chinese arsenal is playing an important role in the entire conflict. Analysts say China is walking the tightrope. Cambodia, remember, is often seen as a close client state of Beijing. But at the same time, China has no interest in damaging its long-standing ties with Thailand. It leaves Beijing caught in the middle, providing weapons to one side while trying not to alienate the other. This balance was also on display during the deadly clashes in July, when 48 people were killed and hundreds of thousands were displaced. Thai intelligence documents revealed that just weeks before that fighting, China had flown 6 Y-20 cargo planes into Cambodia. It delivered rockets, artillery shells, and mortars, many of which were later used against Thai provinces. And now, the violence has returned. Heavy explosions continued along the border today near a string of ancient temples. Both nations claim as their own. Officials say at least 19 people have been killed in the latest round of fighting, with more than 500,000 having fled their homes, as jets, tanks, and drones trade fire over the disputed ground. Thailand and Cambodia have contested over sovereignty for more than a century. Fighting went on over ownership claims of historical sites, and it has raised nationalist tensions. In 2003, rioters torched the Thai embassy and Thai businesses in Phnom Penh over an alleged remark by a Thai celebrity questioning the jurisdiction over Cambodia's World Heritage listed Angkor Wat Temple. Thailand and Cambodia share an 817-kilometer border, which was first mapped by France in 1907, when Cambodia was its colony. But Thailand disputes this colonial map, and efforts to address overlapping claims remain unresolved over the past several years. When clashes last broke out in July, American President Donald Trump had brokered peace between the two neighbors. Back then, Trump had claimed that he had threatened to put tariff negotiations on hold unless both sides stopped fighting. However, Thai Foreign Minister has said that the threat of tariffs should not be used to pressure the country to start talks with Cambodia. Thailand has also rejected foreign intervention and says that it was up to Cambodia to make the first move to show that it wants to de-escalate this conflict. On the other side of Gravitas, we get you the latest from Myanmar, which remains on edge after a military airstrike killed over 30 people. And who has the upper hand in the Bangladesh national elections next year? All this and more after the break. Stay tuned. The US-Venezuela ties continue to be tense. In the latest, Washington has seized a massive oil tanker near Venezuela's shoreline, and Caracas is lashing out, accusing the United States of blatant theft and international piracy. The United States, remember, carried out this operation as American military buildup continues to surge across the Caribbean. Videos released by US Attorney General Pam Bondi shows heavily armed personnel sliding down ropes from a helicopter and storming the vessel. She said the tanker was part of an illicit oil shipping network used to move sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. US President Donald Trump confirmed the seizure, describing the tanker as the largest ever taken.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
In a statement, Venezuela's foreign ministry described the incident as blatant theft and an outright act of international piracy publicly announced by the American president. US media outlets report the tanker was headed toward Cuba and was intercepted by the US Coast Guard. Bondi maintains the ship was already sanctioned for supporting what Washington labels an illicit oil network linked to foreign terrorist groups. The tanker seizure comes as the Trump administration intensifies pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, deploying warships, including the world's largest aircraft carrier, under an expanded anti-drug mission. Under Operation Southern Spear, American forces have also struck more than 20 suspected drug-running vessels across the region, resulting in at least 87 deaths. Venezuela has some of the world's largest oil reserves. Authorities in the country have long accused Washington of attempting to strip the country of its vital resources. During a rally with supporters in capital Caracas, President Maduro called for an end to American intervention. He revived his pitch for a unified South America inspired by the old state of Gran Colombia. The Venezuelan president also marched, danced, and sang the 1988 hit song titled "Don't Worry, Be Happy."
No al intervencionismo.
We say no to interventionism, no to plans for destabilization and regime change. The U.S. government should focus on governing its own country.
Se dediquen a gobernar su país.
All right, shifting focus, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken with US President Donald Trump. This comes amid the ongoing India-US trade talks. Remember, this is the fifth phone call between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump after the US president came to power in January this year. The two leaders reviewed progress in the India-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership over a phone call. They expressed satisfaction at the steady strengthening of bilateral cooperation across all domains. The leaders exchanged views on expanding cooperation in trade, critical technologies, energy, defense, as well as security. Both leaders agreed to work closely to address shared challenges and advance common interests. Prime Minister Modi and President Trump underlined the importance of sustaining momentum in shared efforts to enhance bilateral trade. The two leaders agreed to remain in touch. The Modi-Trump phone call, remember, took place at a time when a delegation led by US Deputy Trade Representative Rick Switzer is in India for the trade talks between the two countries. Prime Minister Narendra Modi took to social media platform X to inform about this meeting. He said, and I quote, "Had a very warm and engaging conversation with President Trump. We reviewed the progress in our bilateral relations and discussed regional and international developments. India and the US will continue to work together for global peace, stability, and prosperity," unquote. The talks between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump come just a week after Russian President Vladimir Putin visited New Delhi for the 23rd annual India-Russia summit. PM Modi and President Putin boosted their comprehensive global strategic partnership. In a major signal to the West, Putin said that Russia is ready for uninterrupted shipments of fuel to India. Importing Russian crude has put India in a geopolitical bind and soured relations with the United States, which believes it is financing the war in Ukraine. Earlier this year, President Trump hit India with trade tariffs of up to 50%, with India's continuing purchase of Russian oil. The latest from Myanmar now, where Myanmar is on edge once again, as a military airstrike killed more than 30 people at a hospital on Wednesday evening. This as the junta wages a withering offensive ahead of elections slated to begin this month. 4 years after the junta's 2021 coup, it has increased airstrikes year on year. The military has set polls starting 28th of December, touting the vote as an off-ramp to fighting. But the rebels have pledged to block it from territory that they control and which the junta is battling to claw back. Meanwhile, a military jet bombed the General Hospital of Mraku, located in the western Rakhine state, which borders Bangladesh. At least 20 bodies were visible on ground outside the hospital overnight. While Daybreak believed and revealed rubble covering ward beds, masonry peppered by shrapnel, and the nearby ground cratered. 31 people were killed and 68 were wounded. Aid workers described the devastation as inhumane. Myanmar's Rakhine state is controlled almost in its entirety by the Arakan army. It is an ethnic minority separatist force that has been active since long before the military staged the coup in 2021, toppling the civilian government of democratic leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The Arakan army has emerged as one of the most powerful opposition groups in the civil war that has been ravaging Myanmar. Several ethnic minority fighters as well as pro-democracy partisans took up arms after the coup. Scattered rebels initially struggled to make headway before a trio of groups led a joint offensive starting in 2023, putting the military on a back foot and prompting it to bolster its ranks with conscripted troops. The Arakan army was a key participant in the so-called Three Brotherhood Alliance, but its two other factions this year agreed Chinese-brokered truces, leaving it as the last one standing. While the military-run election has been widely criticized by conflict monitors, including the United Nations, China has emerged as a key backer, saying it should restore social stability to its neighbor. China's economic interests in Myanmar include critical minerals, oil and gas, as well as the Belt and Road Initiative infrastructure project. Myanmar also provides deep-sea port access, as well as a key alternative to the Strait of Malacca trade route. Meanwhile, the Arakan army has proven a powerful adversary for the junta and now controls all but 3 of Rakhine's 17 townships. But the group's ambitions are largely limited to their Rakhine homeland, hemmed in by the coast of the Bay of Bengal and jungle-clad mountains to the north. The group has also been accused of atrocities, including against the mostly Muslim Rohingya ethnic minority from the region. Meanwhile, the military has blockaded Rakhine, contributing to a humanitarian crisis, which has seen a dramatic rise in hunger and malnutrition, according to a 2024 investigation by the BBC. Myanmar's military government controls only 21% of the country's territory, while rebel forces and ethnic armies hold 42%. The military junta especially struggles to fight ethnic armed organizations across the country, which have made most of the territorial gains so far. The United Nations has reported that the conflict has displaced over 3 million civilians and resulted in more than 75,000 total deaths. Bangladesh will head to polls on the 12th of February next year. The country is entering one of the most defining moments in its modern history as it prepares for a crucial election that will decide which way the country will move. After a year marked by protests, power shifts and regional shadow play, the decision to hold the election in early February came after a series of intensive consultations between the Yunus-led interim government and major political parties. The government advanced the date to avoid an overlap with Ramzan and to ensure a smooth, timely transition to an elected administration. But while the date is now set, the road to a free and fair election is anything but easy. The Election Commission admits that it faces a trust deficit after 15 years of polls marred by controversy and accusations of manipulation. Officials are racing to update voter lists, boost security, and increase participation, especially among women and young voters who were at the forefront of the July uprising. Voters will also decide on a national referendum on the same day. Now, this referendum will determine whether Bangladesh adopts the July Charter, which is a sweeping package of state reforms proposed in the aftermath of the unrest. The Charter seeks to curb executive powers, strengthen the judiciary, reinforce the Election Commission's independence, and prevent the misuse of security forces. If passed, it would amount to one of the biggest governance overhauls in Bangladeshi history. Politically, the landscape is being rapidly redefined. Former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia's Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or the BNP, is eyeing a comeback at the top spot. Jamaat-e-Islami, which was barred from elections for over a decade, is back in the arena after restrictions were eased by the Yunus administration. The newly formed National Citizen Party, created by student leaders following the July uprising, is struggling to translate its street momentum into electoral strength. And Sheikh Hasina's Awami League, which is now banned from contesting, is warning of fresh unrest if the ban is not lifted. But beyond politics, voters are weighing enormous challenges: reviving a government-driven economy which is hit hard by months of instability, tackling corruption, restoring media freedom, and repairing strained relations with India. Amid the election buzz, another plot line has been emerging, one that could reshape South Asia's regional order. And that is, Bangladesh's Foreign Affairs advisor Tawhid Hussain has hinted that Dhaka may be open to forming a regional bloc with Pakistan, and the grouping would exclude India. The remarks follow statements by Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, who claimed that a new trilateral initiative between Bangladesh, China, and Pakistan had already begun and could expand further. When asked further, Tawhid Hussain said such a grouping is strategically possible and added that it may not work for other neighbors like Nepal or Bhutan. He refused to elaborate further and said that had only learned about Dar's comment through media reports. Now, these statements come just months after a trilateral meeting between the three countries in China's Kunming. Around that time, reports had suggested Beijing and Islamabad were working to create a new regional bloc to replace SAARC. As Bangladesh now prepares for a crucial mandate and a nationwide referendum, it finds itself at a geopolitical crossroad, redefining its democracy at home and revising its relationships abroad. Moving on, a scene from eastern Afghanistan is drawing stark parallels to the most feared days of Taliban rule in the 1990s. According to several media reports, the Taliban last week oversaw a public execution in the Khost province, a packed sports stadium filled with as many as 80,000 people. Reports say a 13-year-old boy was made to carry out the sentence against a man the Taliban convicted of killing more than a dozen members of his family. Spectators were barred from carrying phones, but video shot from outside the venue is doing rounds on social media. It captured tens of thousands of men crowding into the stadium. Many Afghans say it feels like the return to a darker era. This marks at least the 11th execution since the Taliban brought back public punishments under their strict interpretation of Sharia law. These scenes are eerily familiar, from the public spectacles of the 1990s to the severe social controls that defined their first regime. The public execution in Khost is not just an isolated incident. For many Afghans, it symbolizes a slide back into a time when fear dominated public spaces, when stadiums and squares were used not for sports or community, but for spectacle and control. Human rights organizations warn that the restrictions are only deepening since seizing power again in 2021, and after the withdrawal of United States and NATO forces, the Taliban has barred girls, remember, from secondary school and university, shut down most employment opportunities for women, and enforced sweeping limits on basic daily life, which has drawn widespread global condemnation. As these reports continue to surface, the international community is again forced to confront a troubling question. Has Afghanistan returned to the very realities which the world once vowed to never see repeated? From Afghanistan, let's talk about Iraq. Iraq has marked 8 years since its victory over the Islamic State group with a military parade in Baghdad on Wednesday. Units from across the security forces, including the army, the special forces, and the counter-terror forces, they all took part in the mega march commemorating the 2017 defeat of the Islamic State group. Take a look. At first, it might seem trivial, but a deeper look, and you would know why Marco Rubio has directed the use of Times New Roman as the official font instead of the Calibri font being used in American government communications currently. Let's first tell you what has happened. The U.S. Secretary of State, Rubio, has ordered the State Department to abandon the Calibri font in official diplomatic communications and return to the Times New Roman font, reversing a policy adopted under Joe Biden to help those who had some kind of vision trouble. In an internal cable dated the 9th of December, Marco Rubio described the prior adoption of Calibri as Wasteful Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Accessibility Program. Now, the font change reflects the broader political and cultural contest over DEIA, or Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Accessibility policies within the federal government. Rubio's critics argue that the shift reflects less concern with typography than with dismantling initiatives tied to diversity and accessibility. Now, this, of course, is something that Marco Rubio has been focusing on. All right, shifting our focus, a new global report has put India's wealth divide back in focus. The World Inequality Report says India remains one of the most unequal countries, with a large share of the country's wealth and income concentrated at the very top. Here are the key findings. The report shows India's richest 10% now hold around 65% of all wealth, while the bottom half owns just 6.4%. The top 1% alone controls 40% of the national wealth. On income as well, the gap is sharp. The top 10% capture 58% of the national income, while the bottom 50% get only 15%. Average wealth in India stands at about $31,530 in terms of purchasing power parity. But for the top 0.001%, the number nearly touches $1.13 billion. The report says India's inequality runs across income, wealth, and gender. Average income per person is about $6,984, but women earn just 61% of men for paid work, and only 32% when unpaid care work is counted. India has also slipped in the global income distribution. Most Indians today sit in the global bottom 50%. The report warns that the world's ultra-rich now pay lower effective tax rates than many middle-income households. It calls for higher taxation at the top and stronger public spending on health, education, and social support to reduce the gap. India's wealth gap is higher than most large economies. If we see the United States, the top 10% hold about 70% of wealth, but the bottom half holds more than in India. In China's top 10%, they hold about 60% of wealth. That's lower than India, with a higher share for the bottom half. But Japan is one of the most equal, as the top 10% hold about 45% of wealth. On the other hand, in United Kingdom, the top 10% hold 55 to 58%. That is still below India's 65%. The world loves chocolate, and demand always speaks around Christmas and festivities. As the air is filled with the chocolate smell, buying that Christmas sweet will cost you more as compared to last year. Though cocoa prices have finally fallen, chocolate in store shelves is not getting any cheaper. Why is that? Let's break it down for you. What's really driving this festive price puzzle? Cocoa supply finally recovered after years of trouble. West Africa's Ivory Coast and Ghana alone produce over half of the world's cocoa. Bad weather, aging trees, and diseases like swollen shoot and black pod sent prices into a tailspin last year. And due to this, cocoa prices jumped record high of $12,000 per ton in 2024. But this year, better rainfall and higher farmer incomes lifted the production, driving prices down to about $6,000 per ton today. But even with cocoa prices following, chocolate makers aren't getting the relief just yet. And why is that? Because they bought most of their cocoa months ago, when prices were sky high. So the Christmas stock you see in stores today was made using the most expensive cocoa in decades. Now, to cut costs, brands have already gone for shrinkflation, price hikes, and even lower cocoa content. UK brand McVitie's just admitted that their Penguin and Club bars are no longer chocolate, but chocolate flavor. This industry is under pressure. High raw material costs have hit giants like Ferrero, Mars, Mondelez and Nestle, and the demand has started to soften. Brands say they need a longer period of stable, lower cocoa prices before they can even think about cutting chocolate prices. But there is some hope. Analysts say Easter chocolates could get cheaper if cocoa stays around current levels. For now, the market is still volatile and the sweet relief might just arrive a few months later. A spark that changed humanity is now burning brighter than ever. A new discovery in Britain pushes back the dawn of fire making by 350,000 years. From the darkness of prehistory, our ancestors' first light just got even older.
It began with a flicker beneath the ancient soils of England, a discovery that rewrites the human story. Archaeologists digging at Barnum have uncovered traces of fire made by early humans, some 400,000 years ago, long before anyone believed we could control the flame. The site revealed a buried surface blackened by heat alongside hand axes cracked by fire, and crucially, fragments of iron pyrite, the mineral once known as firestone. When struck against flint, pyrite throws sparks. And that means one thing: our ancestors weren't just harnessing natural fire, they were making it. Until now, evidence suggested humans first learned to make fire around 50,000 years ago. This discovery pushes that back more than 300 millennia, a big leap for anthropology. Scientists say the pyrite likely didn't occur naturally at Barnum in UK's Suffolk. It was brought there deliberately, proof of planning, understanding, and perhaps even community. Fire-making was a game-changer in human evolution. It meant warmth in winter, safety from predators, and the first cooked meals softer, richer in calories, fueling our growing brains. Around the glow of those early fires, language, cooperation, and eventually culture could flourish. The geochemical analysis from the research, published in Nature Journal, shows heating patterns too consistent to be natural wildfires. These were deliberate blazes made by hand, maintained by skill. The discovery doesn't just add a chapter to our origin story, it shifts the entire timeline of human ingenuity. Scientists describe the find as a shift in human identity. Fire was not the final step toward modern humanity. It was the beginning, the moment we stopped being shaped by nature and began shaping it ourselves. Bureau Report WION World is one.
India's traditional craftsmanship is stepping onto the global luxury stage with one of the world's biggest fashion houses. Italian luxury brand Prada has announced a limited edition line of high-end sandals inspired by India's iconic Kolhapuri-style footwear. The company will price each pair at roughly $930, positioning the collection in its premium segment. What began as a backlash has now turned into a partnership. Just 6 months ago, remember, Prada drew criticism after showcasing sandals that closely resemble centuries-old Indian designs at a Milan show. Photographs triggered outrage across India, with artisans and public figures accusing the brand of cultural appropriation. Prada later acknowledged the influence and reportedly opened discussions with artisan groups. The result is a plan to manufacture 2,000 pairs in Maharashtra and Karnataka through state-backed organizations. This initiative aims to merge Indian handcrafting traditions with Italian design technology. Prada says the sandals will hit shelves worldwide and online in February 2026. The company also said that a 3-year training partnership will provide Indian artisans with programs in India and short-term learning opportunities at Prada's academy in Italy. Kolhapuri chappals have deep roots in Maharashtra and Karnataka, and they are traditionally made by artisans from marginalized communities. The collaboration is reportedly expected to boost earnings, revive interest among younger craftsmen, and protect a heritage industry threatened by cheap copies and a shrinking demand. This development comes as global luxury brands expand in India. Prada opened its first beauty store in New Delhi this year, and analysts estimate India's luxury market valued at $7 billion in 2024, that it may soar to $30 billion by 2030, powered by rising incomes and strong economic growth. Right, next up, cryptos have found a welcoming home in Switzerland. It is a country known for its banking secrecy laws and its ability to lure the rich. The city of Lugano, in particular, has become known for its widespread acceptance of Bitcoin and other crypto tokens for use in daily transactions. Now, Lugano has become a popular and haven destination for regular Bitcoin transactions. The city has adopted a planned program. This project aims to integrate Bitcoin and Tether into the city's financial infrastructure, allowing residents and visitors to pay for a wide range of goods, services, and even municipal taxes using digital currencies. Customers pay using Bitcoin through a machine distributed free to local retail businesses by the City Council using a Bitcoin wallet on mobile phones. Buyers can make contactless payment. The values held by the Swiss, renowned for their respect for personal and financial privacy, align with those of the Bitcoin movement. As a result of this convergence, Switzerland may have one of the world's greatest densities of Bitcoin-only businesses per capita. The Swiss love for Bitcoin is not limited to the common people. More and more government officials, diplomats, lawmakers, and even the Swiss Banking Commission are now showing an interest in Bitcoin. That bodes well for Bitcoin's acceptance in the nation. The public's awareness of Bitcoin and its advantages has only grown. That has contributed to its popularity in Switzerland. Articles discussing Bitcoin's significance in achieving financial freedom and free speech appear often in newspapers and other media channels. These efforts aim to educate those who may not be familiar with Bitcoin. The Swiss project seeks to educate the public about crypto's potential benefits and fill in any gaps in their understanding the onboarding of Lugano merchants. It has been essential in increasing the available payment choices for citizens. Bitcoin usage is in its early stages. Switzerland's favorable position on crypto, remember, extends beyond Lugano. Crypto Valley refers to the canton of Zug in Switzerland. It has been luring blockchain and crypto startups with its progressive policies and supportive government programs. Lugano is at the forefront of Bitcoin's use for everyday transactions, and Switzerland as a whole is positioning itself as a crypto hub. Crypto fans now live in a great place thanks to education campaigns, merchant onboarding, and the fact that Bitcoin's principles are in line with Switzerland's values. The Swiss city Bern is also becoming more and more known as a hub for institutional crypto adoption as Bitcoin gains traction and finds practical applications. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas, but news and updates will continue on WION. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the story.